Child, who get a better angle, you or me? Happy Saturday. Today we are talking about my favorite subject when it comes to my plants, and that is how to grow my pothos fuller and more lush and possibly faster. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to give a little bit of a definition about what lush is. This is not lush. This is my pothos mandula reverted, and even though she's making a comeback, I wouldn't consider her lush, not by any stretch of the imagination. This is the mother plant that plant came from, and this is what I would consider to be lush. She's looking good right now. She's got a little bit ways to go before she's back where she was, but I think she's doing pretty well. Okay, so now that we have the definitions out of the way, let's go into the 4 ways to get your pothos to be nice and full and lush. She is beautiful. Okay, method number 1 is to take several pots of your plant and put them together, or what they call up pot your plants together. This is 4 plants together in one cash pot. 4 different plants all together as one. Quick, dirty, easy, and it looks like a full plant. Method number 2 is to grow your pothos up a moss pole. Now this is not a pothos, this is my philodendron jungle boogie, but think of a moss pole as a vertical pot. Okay, so here is an example of method number 3. And method number 3 is to introduce your plant to, or acclimate your plant to, more light, which then means it needs more water. And if you are feeding your plant through, whether you're doing it through the soil or the water, then the plant will then get more nutrients. So method number 3 is introducing to more light. And method number 4 is propagating your plant. So propagate your mother plant and add those propagations into in with the mother plant to make your pot bigger. Okay, so let's get into more detail of each of those 4 methods. 2 of them may sound exactly the same, but they're a little different. So let's get into that now. Method number 1 was to take several pots, smaller, bigger, it doesn't matter what size, but take several pots and pot them together in one big pot. Now, there are 2 ways that you can do it. You can either pot it in one big pot, or you can take the small pots and put them all together in a cash pot. This is a cash pot, meaning it doesn't have a hole in it, and what's inside here is several different pots to make this look like one full pot of plant. Now, I love this method because it's quick. If you wanted to switch these out and you wanted to show like a grouping of different plants that don't quite have the same watering needs, but you like how they look together, you can put those together and you wouldn't have to be concerned about overwatering one or underwatering another. So I love that method. It really works well for your flexibility. Okay. So with method number 2, and I just want to keep showing you my jungle boogie because she's so cute. But with method number 2, the one thing that I love about pothos, a lot of people say pothos are basic, but let me tell you, nothing about a pothos is basic. A pothos is both a climber and a crawler. And when it comes to moss poles, which is literally, like I said, you can think of it as a vertical pot because your roots are going to grow in this sphagnum moss. Now, I have mines with sphagnum moss, but you could put soil, you could put leca, you could put pond. You would need to make sure that your holes are appropriate so that the media wouldn't fall out of it. But for the most part, you could put whatever media you grow in there. I mean, short of water, although it's probably a way you could do that too. But whatever media you use to grow your plants in, you can put that in the moss pole and allow your roots to go in there. Now, like I said, pothos are both climbers and crawlers. And what does that mean? What that means is, as a climbing plant, when the plant finds a structure and it feels safe and secure, it's going to push out roots. And because it now has more root to sustain the plant, it's going to make the plant bigger. So the stem is going to get bigger and the leaves are going to get bigger. And so that's one way that you can absolutely full or lush up your plants, is by your plants leaves getting bigger and more plentiful. Like that's literally what a bushy plant is, right? It either has more leaves, it has bigger leaves, or it has both, bigger and more bigger leaves. More better. Okay, so I love this method. Now this is the only plant that I have on a moss pole currently, because you know, maintaining a moss pole is a whole thing. I have a solution that I think is working pretty well. I'm gonna give it a little bit more time and I will come back and give you the results of that. But I have never been able to keep this moss pole moist, and I'm doing a much better job. If you notice, she's dry up here, but she's moist down here. So I'm getting closer to a full solution. But she's got new growth. I just want to show y'all because I'm so proud of myself. She's got new growth all over the place. Okay, stay focused. If you like this content, don't forget to hit that like button. And because you like this content, you would absolutely love our community. Hit that subscribe button, and for a deeper connection, just sign up for my newsletter. Link is in the description. All right, let's get back into it. So here is another example of the crawling and climbing aspects of, or properties I should say, of a pothos. This is a Baltic blue. This is absolutely one of my favorite pothos. This is a Epiprimnum pinnatum. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And see, as you see, she puts out feelers. Because she's now sitting on the floor, they're just crawling across the floor. Now she doesn't have a bunch of roots coming out of hers just yet, but I think once she does, or maybe if I were to put her on a pole, she would fenestrate. Now this is one that fenestrates, or some of the properties that they show when a pothos is secured and mature is that the leaves will get bigger, the stems will get bigger, the leaves will get bigger, and they will start to fenestrate. She's doing fantastic. So, so here is an example of, this is a Scindapsus, a jade Scindapsus. It's not quite Epiprimnum aurum, but it is an example of how I used the acclimation of more light to get my plant to grow fuller and more lush. Now, because I give her more light, she then needs more water, and because I feed her or give her nutrient solution through her water, she's getting more nutrient solution. So she has an increase of all these things, and all those help her to grow faster. And because she's getting what she needs, she's growing larger and faster. And as you can see, her internodes are really close together. This is not quite a great example, but her internodes, this is a Scindapsus. They kind of grow weird anyway. But I want to show you another example. This is my neon pothos, and she is another example of a plant that I acclimated to more light. And because of course she got the more light, she got more water and she got more nutrient solution, and she is growing fantastic. Now I like to rotate my plants quite a bit, and so she has been getting light all around. In fact, y'all don't call the plant protection services on me, but I had her near the light, and you see she got burned. Her leaves touched the shield on the light, and it was a little warm, and they got burned. Oh my goodness. Sorry, boo-boo. So this beautiful jade right here, this is a jade pothos. I mean, she's kind of growing. This beautiful baby here is another example of me taking my propagations, putting them together up in the mother plant, and then taking the whole plant and introducing it to more light to get her nice and lush. This plant right here started off in a pot no bigger than this, and this is where she is now, and she's heavy. And I just watered her, so she's really heavy. Okay, so some of the pros and cons And I just want to show you guys her. So some of the pros and cons to acclimating your plant to light too quickly is that you can burn the leaves, right? You can burn or damage your plant, and it will set the plant back a little bit. It might even stop growing or slow down its growth because it's trying to repair itself. So, you know, I've learned the hard way that doing too much too soon is not a good thing. So slowly acclimate your plant to more light, and be careful that when you give it more water, it's because the plant needs it, not because you think it needs it. So make sure that you know, are checking to make sure that your plant needs to be watered, and you aren't just watering it because you've been giving it a little bit more light. And method number four is my absolute favorite method of lushing up my pothos plants. I love propagating my plants. So it is nothing for me to cut my plant. Now this is the reason why she's here, is because I have cut her so many times this year. In fact, I was just talking to Rachel from Lots of Pots in the comment section, and I was telling her that I have cut her so much, I know she is sick of me. So I promised her I was not going to cut her anymore. And what did she do? She pushed out this little section right here already, because I cut her down really good, right? I gave her a nice haircut. And let me show you what that got me. These are all the propagations that I took from that plant. And I have more. Okay, so here is a propagation or cutting that I took. I'm thinking it's been maybe a week and a half, maybe. It has not taken long for the roots to push out, which it rarely does. Sometimes I give it a little extra time. I probably need to rinse this and cut off some of the rot that's down here, which is really kind of rare. But for the most part, these roots are going to do well. So essentially, this is already a plant ready to be put into some soil so it can grow some roots that will acclimate to soil. Now, me cutting this stem forces this plant to create its own root system. So when I take this cutting and I add it to this mother plant, it's going to make the overall health of this plant, which is literally a bunch of cuttings grouped together in the same pot, it's going to make this overall health of this plant stronger, because each one of those stems has its own root system. If I were to have this pot and it was to be this lush with one stem, then all I would need would be for something to go wrong in that soil or something to go wrong with that stem, and the whole plant dies. But whereas I have a lot of cuttings in the soil, in the dirt, then that gives me more opportunity to grow more plant material, one, without having to up pot or have a bigger pot to support all the roots that it needs. But it's also going to give my plant a chance to grow bigger, grow longer, grow fuller, because each stem has its own root system. So I know sometimes we like to think that if we have a lot of roots in our pot, that root system is supporting the entire plant. But the truth is that whether I have this growing in this water or in this pot, if this root is associated with that stem, it is not going to feed another stem. Only the roots that are associated with that stem is going to feed that stem. And so, yes, having a larger root system to a plant is more beneficial than having a smaller root system. But truth is that this root is not going to supply water or nutrients to another plant. It's only going to supply nutrients to the stem that it's associated with. But the more roots we have, the better chance we have of each of those stems being able to sustain itself. So one other perk of propagating is that you can actually design your plant collection through stem selection. So what I mean by that is, this is my mandula. My mandula pushed out a stem of all green leaves. And I took and cut that stem off and created a whole new pot with that. And so even though these are the same plant, they have different looks to them. And so what I'm saying is that you can literally take and cut your stem, propagate, create a whole new plant. You haven't spent any extra money, and you know that this plant does well in your collection. It does well in your environment. It responds to soil, light, all the things. You have so many perks, but you get a whole different look of a plant just by curating and selecting which stems you want to cut. So to me, that's a win-win. You could even design your plant to have variegation on one side and non-variegation on the other just by using stem selection, selecting which stem of the plant to cut that has the amount of variegation or lack of variegation that you want. I think that is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm gonna stop getting wet. Hold on. Okay, another pro to propagating, and I know I've said this 100,000 times, if not already, is that when you cut your plant, not only do you create a root system for that new cutting, you also revitalize and rejuvenate your mother plant. So when you cut your plant to create a new plant, you force the plant to send a signal to, like, hey, we got damaged over there on stem 49. We got damage on stem 49. Go push out some new growth over there. And a plant can push out either a root or it can push out more plant material, right? And so I love that about propagating, because as I propagate, not only do I get a plant, but my mother plant produces more material. And this is how I was able to get so much to work with, because I cut her and then she pushed out more new growth, and I cut the new growth again, and I have so many cuttings just from this one plant by cutting her. Now don't get me wrong, because she had a lot of new growth from when I cut her the first time. She had a lot of growth to cut off, but trust me, once I cut that off, she pushed out so much new growth. I was like, let me cut her again. This is all new growth from the cut that I just took maybe a month ago. So, and I know it's the pothos, all plants don't push out new material as quickly, but pothos, ugh, I don't know who calls them basic, but I don't know how they decide what basic is. But if that's the case, give me more basic. I appreciate basic. Another pro to propagating your plants is that when you cut your plants, it's a cost-effective way to do that. Yes, I can go out and buy another 8-inch plant, but I could also take a plant that I know is growing well in my home, under my care, in the same soil. I know it doesn't have any pests. I know it doesn't have any issues. I know the potential of growth. I know all the things. I know where it's been. I know its backstory.
I can just cut that plant, propagate it, grow it in my home, and make my plants bigger. And you get to swap, you get to share. It's so, propagation is like a little gift from heaven.
And last but not least, I feel like propagating is the absolute best way to learn more about your plants. If you have a new plant that you are trying to learn, or you're trying to get better at taking care, or if you're trying to get better at the care that you give, sometimes we have a plant and the plant is surviving or living or doing well, but we don't know how. We couldn't recreate that with a new plant if we wanted to, because we really don't know why that plant is still alive sometimes. I hate to say it, and I know better, but sometimes even knowing better isn't enough, right? Let me tell you, propagating has given me so many opportunities to get this thing right. And I don't feel guilty for buying more plant, because I'm literally just reusing the plant that I have. But propagating is the way, in my opinion, to educate yourself on how to better take care of your plant. When you propagate, you get to see things like what the roots look like. You get to see how fast they grow. You get to see what new leaves look like. You get to know what a well watered plant leaf feels like. You get to see how quickly the leaves grow and whether or not they come out small and grow big or come out big. You get to see so much with propagating that I just, there is no cons in my, okay, no, that's not true. So one of the cons, and I'll just go into it, is that one of the cons of propagating is that it can be slow. There's a real chance that you could cut your plant and the cuttings could die or not root, right? But I still don't think that's a con, because you cut the mother plant is going to grow back. Now, it might be slow. Like I said, I really do think that is a con, is that it can be slow. But in reality, I would rather take a slow growing plant, and I've gained more knowledge. Like, I don't really see the con in that. There have been plenty of times where I've made cuts and the propagations didn't grow. I tried doing wet sticks. I tried all the things and it just didn't grow. And, you know, I learned something. So at the end of the day, I really don't feel like that was a con, because I walked away knowing we can't do that, or that doesn't work well for me. Like, it took me losing a propagation cutting when I tried to cut the end of the girl words. There's a word for the very tip of the growth point. That's what it is. It's the growth point. I tried to propagate the growth point without having more than 1 or 2 nodes on there, and it didn't do well. And so that told me, just even trying it, let me know you got to be a little cautious when it comes to the growth point, not to propagate too close to the growth point, not to cut, you know, leave a couple of nodes on the stem to get, because those aren't mature enough to push out any roots, right? And so propagating taught me that, right? It wasn't that I hadn't heard it. It just didn't sink in until I actually did the propagation and it didn't work. And I'm like, oh, okay, do better. So I honestly feel like propagating is the best method to get my plants, my pothos, nice and lush. So I'm gonna go over really quickly those 4 methods. The first method is to take 2 different pots, pot them together. You can either pot them in the same soil, in the same pot, or you can take those pots, those individual pots, and arrange them into a some sort of dish, or, you know, that you can hold them together and you can create an arrangement of plants. I love this method because this is an easy way to beef up your plant, whether it's at home or at your office or in any location. If you're staging a home to sell or you have an Airbnb, this is the perfect way to switch in and out plants without having to do a whole bunch of work. So I love this method. Quick and dirty. You can get in and out and you don't have to spend a bunch of time beefing up a plant or waiting for it to get big and lush. You can actually get it there really quickly because you can substitute it out. Like I said, you can also take, this method allows you to be able to add different plants with different needs in the same pot without actually jeopardizing the health of the plant, because you can have different watering needs for each one of these cups that are inside this cash pole. So I love that method of just adding pots in a cash pole to create an arrangement of a lusher plant. Method number 2 is growing your pothos on a moss pole. A moss pole, think of a moss pole as a vertical pot. When you have your pothos growing up a moss pole, not only do they get to push out roots in that medium, the stems get bigger and the leaves get bigger because the pothos grows bigger as it feels secured in its location. So when it's secured itself on a tree or a wall or anything that it decides to climb up. Once it does that and it sends out roots, and those roots are then able to collect water and nutrients, that plant is going, that pothos is going to grow fuller, larger leaves, and it will be lush and beautiful. Trust me when I tell you. Method number 3 is acclimating your plant to more light. And by you acclimating your plant to more light, it is going to reduce legginess. It's going to make your leaves and your stems grow faster. And because you are, it has more light, you will give it more water, and hopefully it will have more nutrients, either through you feeding it through the soil or through the water. It will get more nutrients, and because it has the triple threat, because it has the trifecta, it is going to give you more leaf material, either through bigger leaves, more leaves, or a combination of both of those. And my favorite method, which is propagating your plant, and then taking those propagations and putting those back together with the mother plant, is going to not only rejuvenate the mother plant, it is going to have you create a stronger root system for that plant. And so it getting bigger is not going to be a stretch for that plant at all. It will have no reason to pull back and not grow a large, healthy, bushy plant. You will have more plant material in the pot, and it will produce roots for those stems, and because it's doing that, it will be able to grow long tendrils with really close internodes, bigger leaves, and you will have a bushier plant. I'm in the process right now of doing a really fun series on YouTube Shorts. I'm doing 30 days of my favorite leaf, and so go over there and get you some leafy goodness. I put those videos out at 4 p.m. every day, actually for the month of August. So if it's if it's after August, you can go back and watch them. But if it's during the month of August, check them out every day at 4 p.m. Also, if you did not check out last week's video is going to be alive. Well, it won't be live by the time you see it. But I did a live, and I'm going to give you some updates on my propagations, my community mail updates. I got some new plants from a community member some time ago and potted those up, and I have new growth. And when I tell you, the new growth is amazing. I did some cuts on my Hoyas this year and potted up some of my Hoyas, and I have new growth on them too. So I'm doing a full-on live. I'm sorry if you missed it. Go watch the replay. By the time you see this video will be out, so there's no way I can tell you to join me. But yeah, go watch the replay. I am going to give you my updates on those and probably pot up some things as we go along. So if no one else has said it to you today, have a great day. Bye. Method number 3 is, I'm so excited for her. Uh-oh, what happened? Did you? No, did I lose? Oh no. Is that just a sheath? Oh, that's just a sheath. Look at that. Okay, stay focused. Oh, I got growth and roots everywhere. Oh yeah, she's working. Okay, we're gonna have to add more water to it, but she's working other than that.